So welcome everyone to Wild Digital, the online series with today's topic, how now, Mr. CEO and Mr. CEO here. So it should be a great topic. I'm looking forward to having an interesting conversation with my fellow panelists here and guests. But before we get started, let me quickly introduce everyone. So of course, starting with our lady here, Ms. Karen Chun, the CEO of AirAsia.com, which is the AirAsia online platform. And we have Jason Thompson, CEO of OVO, Indonesia's largest digital payment platform. And Mr. Hamish Stone, the CEO of iCar Asia Limited, which is Southeast Asia's largest network of online automotive sites. So very interesting and diverse businesses, but all in the digital world, but clearly impacted by the virus as well as the current crisis in very different ways. So and that's part of what we'll be talking about here today. But before we go there, maybe it'd be great if I just hear everyone just do a quick introduction on who you are, your business, and maybe just a quick background. Karen, can we start with you?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen. Thank you for the introduction, Marcus. I oversee AirAsia.com. Our mission is very simple. How can we transform AirAsia into the fastest growing travel and lifestyle platform in ASEAN? I think for those who have actually flown with us, you would not be unfamiliar to the platform. But if you've actually checked back in recently, we now have 17 different line of businesses, from basically seats to hotels, activities, lifestyle deals, e-commerce, insurance. We basically want to be the one-stop shop portal for consumers. Whether you're looking for the next travel, I know there's a lot of pent-up demand, or whether you're looking at buying anything online, you can now do it at the convenience of one unified platform. So I've been with AirAsia for over 1 year now. Prior to that, I have always been in the retail vertical. I've been a franchise consultant for 15 years, always been working in F&B, and my core focus is digital transformation. How do you actually go and transform brick and mortar stores into full omni-channel distribution? So that's it from me.
Thanks, Karen. Let me throw that over to Hamish.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm Hamish. I'm the CEO of iCar Asia, and we run the largest network of automotive portals and marketplaces across the ASEAN region, with a focus on the three biggest markets in the region: Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. So our mission really is to be the place that people turn to get the right information to solve all their automotive needs as they move through the different journeys of buying, owning, and selling a car. I've been with the business for just over 4 years now, and prior to that, I worked for eBay for 10 years in Australia on their e-commerce platform, which is where I'm from, and then in the UK and the Netherlands on their classified businesses. Thanks.
Excellent. And Jason from Indonesia here.
Hey, thanks, Marcus, and thanks to Wild Digital for the kind invitation this afternoon as well. Very much appreciated. So I'm Jason Thompson. I head up OVO, a group of companies across the fintech space, which is really focused on financial inclusion, literacy, and equality, giving equal opportunity for growth here in Indonesia, supporting President Jokowi's ambition of accelerating our new middle economy affluent consumer, can't talk this afternoon, and also the rapid growth in SMEs. So I feel very privileged to be here in Indonesia. I've been here around 2.5 years, in Asia about 3.5 years. My background is very much in technology and consumerism. I have a real passion for consumer. I love looking at products and services and working out how we improve people's lives. So it's a real privilege to do that. We're more than a payments company these days, lending businesses, insurance businesses, wealth management, investment, scoring systems. So it's a lot more complicated running over than it was kind of 2-3 years ago.
Excellent. That's great. And I think that's really helpful to people to understand really not just what you're doing right now, but where you guys are coming from. The next one I really love to get a good sense, and we obviously just talked about it before we went on air here, and that is the vast difference. We've heard everything from an 80% drop in some parts of the business to someone mentioning a 260% increase in growth of new users. So we have again, very diverse mix here of what was happening since the virus started. So again, let me start with Karen there. Can you give us a quick one where the business really, what happened, over the last 4 months and what did you see?
I think it has been a bit of a roller coaster ride. I see the best and also the worst of both worlds. So we, as a digital platform, you know, our DNA is very, very much on AirAsia as an airline. It's not the best time to actually own planes. And we do see a significant impact on the travel business. Luckily, we are recovering. Flight has already resumed since end of May. And it's really interesting that the consumer pent-up demand for travel is very, very significant. We started flying again end of May with only 5% capacity. Last month, we ramped up to about 20, and this month we're close to 50% for domestic flights. Obviously, international is still very much dependent on the reopening of borders. So we do have a huge impact on the travel piece. But as I mentioned, we also have an e-commerce business, and similar to what Jason was mentioning, we actually have new consumer coming onto our platform at 160% versus pre-COVID. So you see the best of both worlds, and I think the trend for home delivery, for basically having the peace of mind that you can actually gonna be at home and you can have things delivered to you, this whole first mile, last mile fulfillment, on-demand fulfillment is here to stay, and that's how we're pivoting our business as well.
Interesting. And Jason, give us. I know you got the big numbers there. Talk us through that one.
Yeah, so I think the pandemic, as I said earlier, I think we were very fortunate in some ways that the pandemic was kind of rolling across China into Europe, North America, and for some reason there was some. It was slower reaching Southeast Asia or gaining momentum. For whatever reason, that allowed us to really prepare. So the way we moved our staff into home working, we looked at utilization. So we run weekly utilization and engagement studies on our entire workforce. And that gave us a period of about 2 weeks where we redeployed everybody to where the new focus was, you know, that immediate new normal. I removed my CPO from role and put him into a dedicated war room and staffed up the war room dedicated. So that was, you know, everything from what is our strategy down to every single invoice that came into the business we challenged. So really, you know, we took an entirely different approach and we created a very new normal for us. In April, we saw a 276% rise in new registrations, which, you know, we had to redeploy resources for electronic Know Your Customer. We had to change the way we were approaching our customers and engaging them for specifics on data. So I think we weathered the storm very early, very well. And that's allowed us to continue the business with a level of normality. But, you know, we really had to move very, very quickly to a new normal. And I was grateful in a way that the impact of the pandemic came later and gave us some breathing space to get ready.
Interesting. Hamish, what happened to iCar? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, similar story, a bit of a roller coaster. We certainly suffered as the business restrictions came into place across the different countries. And that was probably the earliest and the strictest business restrictions was in Malaysia, which is one of our largest, most profitable markets. So the MCO, as it was introduced, effectively shut down the somewhat 2,500 small businesses that work with us on our platforms in Malaysia, really dropping things down dramatically in April. And for us then, the big recovery sort of came as things opened up at the beginning of May for Malaysia, and has been a rapid rise since then. Thailand for us, our second biggest market in terms of revenue, didn't close down businesses too much, so that actually sustained its supply and somewhat demand as well, quite well throughout the whole of the quarter. And Indonesia was doing well and is now in a bit of a worse state as restrictions have come in. I suppose the encouraging thing we've seen is demand coming back quickly to the platform as those business restrictions and movement restrictions have been lifted. And we see as we exit Q2 that the demand metrics are getting back towards pre-COVID levels, whilst we've been able to maintain our level of accounts and the level of listings and cars available for sale on the sites throughout the whole of the quarter.
Very interesting. Now, before we get deeper into the business world, I'd love to dig a bit into your personal world. You know, the topic is how now CEO, but you don't wake up being the CEO. You wake up being a mother, you know, being a spouse, and so there's a different world out there for all of us as well. And during a crisis like this, there is a lot of fear, anxiety, you know, and we know what's happening around the world. What's your ritual? How do you get yourself ready to be there and can perform at the peak, dealing with 1,000 employees or customers around the world? Again, maybe we'll start with Karen there.
I forgot that I'm actually a mother and a wife. I think at the height of the crisis, you know, the first month when we are basically dealing with 200, 300 times the cancellation and refund, we were basically on overdrive. We were working about 18, 20 hours. Every day, you know, every hour we have basically a crisis management team to go and understand what should we do with network. Should we open for April? Should we open for May? And then we have to go and close it again because it is so dynamic and we just don't know when we can fly again. So during the first month, it was really, really tough. And I think for me, the most important piece about managing crisis as a CEO was basically the transparency in communication. You just have to say you don't know. And it is important, whilst, you know, you can lead by experience. I think during crisis like this, you need to lead by empathy. There's a lot of families who are impacted, similar to what, you know, Jason and Hamish were also saying, that families were separated. How do you actually go and get them back together? So as we basically look at what is the top 3 things we need to do to go and manage the crisis, the first thing is basically looking after our passenger. We need to go and send repatriation flights to wherever Malaysians are to go and bring them back home. That was basically our first purpose. Medical supplies to areas that need medical supplies. The second piece is about looking after your staff. There's a lot of mental distress. There's a lot of emotions during these times of uncertainty and ambiguity. We actually put down a hotline for our staff to go and call in for just talking to them, for basically a counseling hotline on, you know, the uncertainty that's being faced as they are not flying. We have a lot of crew that doesn't know what's happening. So we also did that. We also started a fundraising internally to go and support families who are in distress. You know, all stars. We call our crew all stars because they are all the rock stars of our company. All stars helping all stars. And the third thing is basically looking after the community. Some of the work that as we pivot is really about in support of the economy. AirAsia has always been standing behind. How do we go and save jobs, support local communities, especially a lot of the SME business that basically have gone bust and they can't actually sell anymore because they can't pay rent? How do we enable some of these small vendors to go and utilize our platform to go and start selling their produce for free? We don't actually charge any commission. So I think those were the top 3 things that we continue to focus on day in, day out. And in terms of what sort of pressure release valve for myself, I think I'm very blessed that during the lockdown, my family was with me, unlike some other families. So just being able to have dinner with them, you know, at night and just to be with a family, it's to have some normalcy, yeah. And for me, I always wake up very early in the morning. I always try to have some devotion time to go and just basically, you know, collect my thoughts, just to understand that you are not going to go and change everything overnight. It's going to be one step at a time. And how do we continue to stay positive?
Great answer there. Jason, you want to jump in and share a bit, because I know you've been separated from your family. You have a bit of the opposite there.
Yeah, I think my daughter Sky's 13 and my son Reese, I often get called JT and he gets called Artie. So normally at work I get called JT. So Artie and I, you know, his father and son, that's been really hard. So we've adopted a process where we video time first thing in the morning at breakfast together. We do a bit of time at lunchtime just to catch up. They're at a pottery school right now learning pottery, bless them. And then in the evening we have around 6 o'clock religiously I stop work for 30 minutes and spend time with my kids. I've been trying to help my daughter a bit more with homework and things like that. And they're both very understanding, but it has a psychological impact on us all, without a shadow of a doubt. So, you know, I'm divorced, so it's not there's, you know, it's mainly the kids. I found that really hard, and it's week 19. And I guess, you know, like everyone, you know, I'm just the same as everyone. There's good days and there's difficult days. But what I do, I'm a great believer in, you know, fit body, fit mind. You wouldn't know it when you see me, but the truth is I do really fit. So I'm an early riser, up early. I like to meditate, listen to the Bible in the morning first thing, and then do fitness. I generally do a good routine in the morning, work hard, sweat, and then the day begins for me with the kids and calls, and I really enjoy it. It's very intense. I found that if I did this in one stretch, I found it really hard. So what I do now is I take a 35-minute break in the middle of the day, and I do a 1K swim every lunchtime, and it really refreshes my mind. And then back in the afternoon, and I want to knock down walls again and do all the things that you want to do. So I really enjoy my new routine. I found it hard to cook for myself because, I'm here in Indonesia on my own. There's nobody allowed in the building. And so I found it hard taking breaks and making sure I was eating. I had to, it's just the reality that you live. It's a very different reality. But I've enjoyed routine, and I've actually, Karen, I'm sorry to say, I've really enjoyed not flying all the time. It's been quite a nice break. I am actually really now feel quite claustrophobic, and I just want to walk on a beach I'd love to walk on a beach in Bali with my kids.
Yeah.
That's my dream. Just go for a walk with them.
I can correlate with what you were sharing there. Hamish, I want to change a bit the question for you here. What was the first things when you start seeing the crisis coming, right? And clearly it was a massive shutdown around the world very quickly. What was the first thing you were doing, as the CEO? Where was your target right away? Was it also your people first, or figure out how to save cash flow and all the other stuff? Talk us a bit through that.
Yeah, as we saw things starting to progress in February, we started trying to work out how we would maintain the workforce and how we could make them be effective in working from home as well. So a lot of what we put in place was contingency plans based on whether we were going to be able to have the office open or the office not open, if we were going to be able to visit clients or not visit clients. Rushing out and buying a few extra laptops, working out how we could transfer our call centers to individual people's houses or mobile phones. And with that, across the 3 countries, we had a plan in place for all of our employees to be able to transition quickly towards working from home. And that was probably the main priority for us, because we saw infections starting to rise, and we made the decisions very early to send all our employees home so that their health could be maintained. And that was kind of our main priority there, stopping client visits and shifting to a fully digital way of working. We were lucky that we were set up very well already to do that. So business operations to be able to maintain completely. It took us about 36 hours to transition to fully working from home. And then on the financial side, I guess we were looking very closely as the government announcements were coming out around the business restrictions that our partners and clients would be facing, and what impact that would have on them. What could we do in a shutdown world to support them as well through our products? And how could we engage with them also around the strategies they should be thinking about and putting in place, not only during business restrictions times, but how to come out of the restrictions as positively as possible. And with those sorts of things in place, we then really focused on cash and cash management. So every single expense line item, we go through talking with our suppliers around discounts, around different payment terms, and really matching those up to the daily cash collection rates that we had, or that we were still able to do with some of our partners and customers. So in the end, it was across those three big areas for us.
Interesting. A quick follow-up: how many people are still working from home versus sort of people are back in offices across the region?
So for us, our offices are now allowed to be open. So we have some multiple teams of people set up depending on their function. So we have our field sales team who really only come into the office for a couple of hours a week now. We have telesales teams and other functional teams that are in the office 5 days a week. And then the rest of our teams are essentially on a rotation where they're working on 1 week, then working off another week. So in total, that means we have about 40% of our staff in the office at any one time, and tracking all of their movements so that we can tell if we have an issue with anyone getting exposed or getting infected, then we have a way of determining the health of all of our staff.
Interesting. Karen, I know you spoke a bit already, the larger AirAsia, the cruise and everyone, your all-stars there. How about just on your digital part? How much do you guys work off from home still, or people are really coming back to offices?
So we are also, our offices are also open, and we are practicing the business continuity whereby we have two rotational teams, Team A and Team B. 50% will come in 2 weeks, and then the Team B will come in the other 2 weeks. But obviously, me and my leadership team, we are Team Alphabet, right? So we just basically have to be here. Yeah. Okay. But I guess we basically, for us, we had a bit of a sneak peek, because we already fly into China when the COVID started first in China. And we already noticed that because we fly into 25 hubs in China, we already knew that this is gonna hit us hard. And so our crisis management actually started slightly earlier, just basically in, thinking about what should be the network capacity flying into China, and then start scaling back for the rest of the ASEAN. And one thing that we've actually learned as we continue to go and have different response teams managing the different parts of the group for AirAsia.com is that we need to go and pivot fast. We don't have time. The planes will be where it is. We need to go and start bringing in other revenue. We are no longer talking about growth, we're talking about survival. So that's why a lot of our work, especially my product and my tech team, has been about pivoting to basically change our backend system to be able to go and onboard 3,000 merchants selling vegetables, fish, daily grocery, from basically selling cosmetics and perfume. The payment schedule, and I'm sure that Jason would know, from a T+60 for some of the MNCs to a T+2 for a fisherman takes a lot of work in the back. Yeah. And I just want to give the kudos to my team to be able to go and do that. We are by far not perfect. We still are, in the process of full automation. But over the 2 months of lockdown, we have actually done a lot of automation for merchant onboarding.
Excellent. Yeah. And you already, nice lead into really what was my question. Next question is, the new normal, which is, the new term everyone uses. What does it really mean to you? How much you really believe the business has changed and will or needs to change in the long run versus just hoping one day it all goes back to normal? Maybe Jason, we lost you there already for a little bit. Maybe you jump back in here.
Yeah, sorry, I had a connection problem. So in terms of the new normal, there's something I do twice a year that's really important to me. I invest a lot of time in skip level interviews. So this time around, I did 54 skip level interviews and around 30 hours of discussion over 3 weeks. And it doesn't sound a lot when you say over 3 weeks, but when your diary is already challenging. But we collated 22 pages of feedback from our teams. And really to understand how things are impacting their family, their mental health, their psychological health, their religion, their routine, the impact of connectivity in their environments, all sorts. It's been an incredible journey, and I'm really blessed that my team and I have a very, very open dialogue. What I've learned is I think we have taken a way of working in Indonesia and in Jakarta in a very literal way, where everybody has to come to the office. Everyone has to be there. Every meeting has to be face to face. What we've found is our productivity has just been incredible, really great. The engineers are saying, I don't need to spend 90 minutes on a motorbike trying to get to work. I can wake up, I can enjoy breakfast with my family, go through my routine, and I can be online. So we do morning stand-up around 8:15, all of the teams. We communicate every morning. We do stand-up across every team. Where we all connect, it's social. We spend a lot of time training our managers and our leaders to make sure that these are still personalized. We found that a lot of meetings become transactional, which is not good for team spirit and camaraderie. We've increased the volume of communication to our teams massively. We established something called a leadership circle with around 80 people in it. And we bring that team together to debate many things, share strategy, problems. The result has been productivity increase is number one. Utilization has increased, but most importantly, the feedback from our team is our OVO employee survey went up 17 points in Q2. Our staff are happier than ever.
Oh.
I think that's amazing.
That is amazing.
I'm really blessed to have Shirley and the people experience team that has got such empathy and great hearts. But I'm really proud that in this time we've managed to increase our connection with our team. And so my new norm is I want to have a town hall every 2 weeks, like I've got one tomorrow. I want to invite ministers to talk to us. I want to challenge and have more micro innovation from our skip level and our organization. If anything, I've relearned some of the things I forgot, that everybody in the organization can make a huge difference. And I think it's retaught me some valuable lessons.
That's very interesting. We have about 10 minutes left before we're going to go into some questions from the audience. So while we sort of almost tailing of for the finishing up here with our conversation, if you're now looking really long term, few years into the future here, where do you see the opportunities and the threats to your business model going forward? You know, we don't know whether this can happen again, how long, you know, COVID will last, is it going to come back? You know, we've seen all the different waves. I mean, we're all watching the same news in the, you know, every day, and adjusting on the fly to some degree. Hamish, maybe jump in there. Where do you see your business into the future? Is it really going to change dramatically, or you think it's going to go back to a more, you know, how you've operated before?
No, I think during this period, I guess we've been getting closer and closer to our customers and clients, and trying to work with them on what they will do once business restrictions are lifted, what's going to be their sort of post-COVID strategy. And a lot of them are recognizing the opportunity to embrace digital in a larger way. So as people had to be stuck at home, the only way to get really in contact with them was through the digital platforms. I think a lot of the testing and a lot of the new formats that we've tried to introduce, including different types of transactional ones, have really opened up the minds of a lot of the companies we work with towards the benefits of working with digital. So I think the shift is going to be coming there. I think the attitudinal shift also from consumers towards how they think about mobility and whether they're willing to get on public transport or whether they want a personalized, safer way of traveling like a car is also going to be one shift. And also the want for them to be able to close a transaction in their home rather than in a dealership is also going to drive for us an opportunity, also a challenge of how do we evolve our business model, which is predominantly around an advertising, subscription and feature-based business model, towards something that's more of a partnership and transactional model with manufacturers of cars, with car dealers overall. So we think the shift in digital is only speeding up. The consumers are shifting their demand towards using platforms like our sorts of platforms to make decisions around buying cars. And that in the future, we're going to have to evolve our platform to support that need of the consumers to close transactions online. Great.
Karen, I've heard Tony say AirAsia wants to be an e-commerce company in the future, right? Or along those lines. I'm probably paraphrasing a little bit, and that's obviously exactly your space. So where do you see really, you know, the airline is the core business to some degree still, but that's not really where he wants to be, right? Tell us a bit about that.
His exact words are, we want to be the Amazon of the air.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, something like that. Correct.
And that's what AirAsia.com is about. If you know our tagline for the airline, now everyone can fly. He will always remind us, AirAsia.com is now everyone can, full stop. Now everyone can fly, can stay in a hotel, can eat, can shop, can chat, all within one platform. And to your question on how we are actually embracing the new normal, maybe I can actually break it in two pieces. We are still very committed to re-stimulating travel, whether it's domestic travel or once border open for international travel, and we are leading in the new contactless and sanitized travel. Similar to what Hamish is saying, we have to digitize it. And for people to be able to feel safe and have peace of mind to fly again, it's got to be contactless. You need to go and reduce a lot of the human interaction as much as possible. And so we've been working with a lot of the government ministries, Ministry of Health and Transport, and also tourism, to ensure that we are actually putting protocols in place, having sanitized, safe, and also contactless experience, from basically pre-flight contactless check-in all the way to when you are actually at the airport, health screening, health document validation, all the way to basically in-flight, minimizing the contact between crew and passengers. So we're doing a lot of that to ensure that we can continue to support domestic tourism and also a lot of the local industries that are actually dependent on tourism. So that's on the travel piece, and that is still a core business for us. In terms of the digital platform piece, as I mentioned, we have always, our DNA is about disruption and innovation. We are not innovating just product now, we are also innovating process. In the past, when we have big pockets, right, and doing marketing for every single campaign, we are now leveraging on our own ecosystem. As I mentioned before, we have 75 million database. 80% of the traffic is organic coming to our site. So we just launched a new product, I think you've seen it as well, called Unlimited Flight Bundle, in response to post-COVID. People love to travel, they just don't know when, and they don't know whereby they can actually get flights. So we launched this particular product called Unlimited Flight Bundle that allows you to buy now and fly later for the rest of the next 12 months. It was very, very successful. And as a result of doing this, we decided, let's not go and invest a single dollar on marketing. Let's go and leverage on our PR, our communications, our social media, our own ecosystem. And we were able to get into 150 different press releases. So we are now looking at a different way in the new reality, working really hard our own ecosystem. That's the first piece. The second piece is also about what else can we actually deliver for customers so that we can continue to go and drive frequency to come back to our site. We've done a lot of the e-commerce work, as I mentioned. From selling duty-free products, we are now selling fresh produce. Now we are also scaling. From Malaysia, we're going to scale to Indonesia, to go and scale to Thailand, so that all the cross-border that we can actually enable with our cargo belly space, we can now actually go and do cross-border for fresh produce as well.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Jason, last thought from you before we get into questions from the audience. In terms of, your industry, you're growing, and that's a good thing. I think you clearly were the one here who had the biggest positive impact of everyone. Where do you see the digitization, of course, isn't stopping, and you guys are right in it, but where do you start adding products or services and for your particular platform?
I think as a CEO in this environment, I don't think a CEO can ever have just one key strength at one key moment. I hear Karen's story of diversification. I hear Hamish talking about operational control and changes. I don't think we have the opportunity to do one thing on any day of our lives. But I tried to anchor on two things that I think have carried me through this. And I do think I've had more good days than bad, but there's definitely been some very, very tough days. The first thing is humility to understand this is a global problem, the humility to understand nobody has the right to get through this without being unscathed, and we haven't, and the humility to understand that I've got no experience in this environment, so I need to learn just like everybody else. So I think humility was important. And the next was the quality of decision making. I think I saw a lot of panicking, and I was determined I wasn't going to panic, and I wasn't going to panic my team, and then I put them first.
I like that.
So I really did anchor on the rigor of decision making, the allocation of resource. What do we stop doing? What do we do more of? What do we start doing? And also empowerment. In a time where I saw people controlling this quality of decision making was a form of giving empowerment. And I think because of that, as a team, we're closer. We are better for COVID as an organization. We're more streamlined, we're more focused. We're doing less than we were doing pre-COVID, and I think we're doing it better. But humility, I would say, is my biggest thing, that we all had to have humility with the global pandemic. And I'll be honest with you, my scenarios are very clear. Is this a V or a W? And looking around the world right now, it's more likely to be a W than a V. So there's a long way to go. So, maybe in 3 months' time we do this again and see what we all look like and feel like. I don't know. But I don't think we're out of the woods yet. I don't know if I'm halfway to see my kids, 3/4. I don't.
Karen has booked your flight already, but
she's. I think you said VIP.
I'll help you, Jason. I'll help you, Jason.
Maybe you can help me too with my Thai trip here. But we have some questions coming in here, and some good ones. So let me kind of take the first one here. Clearly, you're not startups anymore, but some of you been in startups before, and even, of course, Over and iCar were startups, a while back, and AirAsia, of course, a long, long time ago. So the question here is, what's the advice for startups, and how can they survive in this current environment? Who wants to jump on that one?
Can I take this one? Because
Please.
I actually consider AirAsia.com as a startup within an 18-year-old company.
Okay, great. Please.
One thing that we've actually learned is that When we were a startup, you want to basically just go and pump money and grow. I think this is a new reality. We need to go and start rechecking. How much do you actually need to build? How much can you actually borrow? And how much can you actually JV? So in the past, when we talk about, okay, let's go and build the most unified platform, let's go and build our own payment pipe. Now is the time for us to go and recheck. What are some of the things that we can actually leverage on some of the tech giants? And instead of building from scratch, let's go and hit the market fast. This is the time now for us to go and grab market share. Tony always say, never waste a crisis. We will come out leaner but stronger. So one thing that we've actually seen post-COVID or as a result of COVID is that a lot of hotels, for instance, we are now selling hotels, right? Hotels who will never talk to a low-cost carrier, the 4 and 5 star, they are now coming to us because everybody is actually in the same boat. We are now basically signing contract with multiple multinational hotel chains, giving us 30-40% discount because now we can bundle that together with the flight. So I think there's a lot of opportunities about, but we might need to go and reprioritize. Instead of investing too much on things that's already available in the market, go and start doing collaboration. Go and start doing JVs and be faster and basically obtaining market share.
Anyone else has a thought on that as well?
I'd like to build on Karen's point. I think we didn't have a choice. So in Indonesia, it's a very specific market. The localization is terribly difficult, not least for the geography, but also the colloquialism and the nature of the country. So we built the payments business on our own. We've built a very specific fraud management system for Indonesia that's very, very successful for us. So we've done those things. But when I look at things like insurance, when I look at wealth, when I look to the future of digital banking, you'll see that we use existing enterprise systems and partnerships to really accelerate where we can, and then overlay that with localization. So I agree with Karen in this time, and I think it's in Europe we see a lot more of this with integrated enterprise businesses, but in Asia, I think we've got a bit more FOMO about it, and I think I've caught that drug from Anthony and William as well. It's got to be ours. But I think we're all growing up a bit, thinking better together. Let's hold hands and work together. And the global markets of investment are also driving that kind of thinking as well. I was on a good session early this morning with Goldman Sachs, and I was on a session with the British Embassy the other week with investors from Europe. I'm not in the market for investment, it's more educational. But it's quite interesting. I think everybody's looking at how do we drive global growth and improve the bottom line fast. And that is a challenge. So I think a lot of CEOs, we're all going to have to get over our ego and work together and be happy doing so.
And that's a very interesting point. What I've seen in my industry is people you would normally not talk to, either if they reach out to you, you wouldn't bother, or the other way around, if you trying to get someone. And now everyone is talking to each other. I don't know how many Zoom calls and conference calls and other things I've been on. And I think that's the beautiful part of it, maybe in the sense of that they're really, I think the world is coming more together. People within the same industry, which maybe saw yourself as competitors previously, are now saying, how do we work together? You guys get a sense of that as well? Is that a sort of general thought, what you see happening, or?
I've not seen Xi and Trump do that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not saying everyone. There's always an exception to the rule here.
No, India and China. Yeah.
But Hamish, how do you see it? You guys, how do you mentioned a few times already that how close are you working with your customers and so on. But how about competitors? You guys, you see cooperation there, or is it still a war?
Yeah, more from the customers and our clients, also our suppliers. So a lot of great support coming from some of the key suppliers that we have around discounting and payment terms, and what can we do to set you up maybe on a longer term contract, but that means we give you a discount and great payment terms. So yeah, and particularly I guess the customers. So trying to work with them on the digital strategy. So how can we help them book cars when people can't leave their house? How can we help them deliver inspections via a partner that we have who's still allowed to be out because they're a car breakdown service, and we can help run the business like that. So Yeah, I guess our competitors, we're in contact with them all the time anyway, but not so much to work together just yet. But yeah, certainly a lot of people reaching out to see how they can help and how we can come together as a network and team that's supporting the automotive industry.
Aaron, what did you see in the airline industry? Because everyone was suffering, right? I mean, there was no exception to it. No one had planes on the flying. Did you see some cooperation there of how the whole industry could come back alive in a sense?
Absolutely. I have been having multiple calls with different OTAs. We actually classify AirAsia.com as the only OTA with Metal, right? Because we own an airline. Now it's a bit of a liability, but we have never worked so close with OTAs and basically really stimulating demand for travel again. So OTA is one piece. Equally, as we start looking at basically some of our other hotel partners, the same. When we have unsold seats, they also have unsold rooms. So how can we actually go and collaborate and give the consumer the best deal? What has been really encouraging is that if you start looking at basically the trend for domestic travel, the pent-up demand is there. We just basically hit record sales this Monday just passed. People want to travel. If you go and give them value for money, they do want to go and get out of the house. So I think that's another piece. The third piece with airline is that since last year, AirAsia.com no longer just sell AirAsia flights. We are selling any flights. So we are basically airline agnostic. And we have quite a few Middle Eastern airlines coming to us to say, hey, we just can't go and get traffic from ASEAN. Can you help us? And then they are basically discussing direct sourcing deals with us as well. So definitely to Jason's point, bets together so that we can actually recover faster.
Now I'm going to throw a little more interesting here out. How has it been working with the governments in your part of the world? Have they been supportive, or who wants to jump on that one?
My camera and mic's gone really bad.
Nice one.
No, I'll jump in if you don't mind. I have
Please.
had nothing but honour, privilege and pleasure working with Bank of Indonesia, OJK and the government. We've had 5 first ministers join our town halls. Palho, Patetem, Pawishmantana have all joined our town halls to share their stories. We received confirmation from Bank Indonesia that they considered us a strategic partner for COVID-19 response. Honestly, I think we often use the word humble too much in Southeast Asia. I am genuinely humbled and amazed how the government was prepared to break barriers, work faster, work together. Absolute privilege. I'm really proud of the Indonesian government. I think my own British government would do well to learn some things.
Interesting. Hey, Mish, you operate obviously multiple markets. What did you see in general?
Yeah, in general, we saw the government move quite quickly to support small businesses in particular. So access to credit, those sorts of things. Also to support consumers through a number of policies to help their spending, which from our perspective helps them to be able to maintain their car ownership, which is very, very important in building the industry in Southeast Asia. So for us, it seemed like they moved very quickly and with some good policies to help not only businesses but also consumers in a very effective way. So the business restrictions, I think there we saw the different approaches across the different 3 markets. But I think the consistent thing was how quickly could they responsibly open back up the economy and support both the manufacturing and the earlier parts of the supply chain for the automotive industry, as well as the retail components of the industry. And there we think that they've moved pretty effectively and pretty quickly to support the overall business and the overall economy.
Interesting. Karen, I will spare you that question. I have another one for you. And again, it's come a couple of times in the questions from our audience about the values a CEO needs to have. We heard earlier from Jason, empathy is a big one, of course, but love to have your top 3 values and why do you see them being the most important in this current environment for a CEO?
Yeah, before I talk about leadership value, let me just put a disclaimer. Not a day goes by in the past 3 months that we do not have a meeting with government ministers, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Tourism, as well as also meeting a lot of the ambassadors for the ASEAN region to go and start working on green lanes. We need to go and get this happening, you know, for the industry. So we have a very good relationship, and there'll be some more announcement coming out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and you would assume that you have no choice, but you have to work so closely together because both you need to get back up there, and the countries need you to have people travel. The tourism needs, so is huge industry in the region. So I've no doubt that you guys are probably on the phone every day there, or a meeting in some sense.
So going back to the takeaway for, you know, what it takes to be a leader now, I think Jason has really nailed it to the head. You know, it's really about humility and being real. I think this is a time not for caution, but this is a time for courage. And whilst we may not actually know what's going to happen, we don't have a crystal ball. I think it is very important to lead with courage and character. We need to be able to go and have credible optimism, to go and convey to the team, hey, we are only opening 5%, but it's better than all the planes grounded. Hey, now we are opening 20%. Let's go and look at what else we can actually do. Hey, now we are back to 50% for domestic. Let's go and lobby hard so that we can actually start establishing green to green zones so that we don't actually need to go and have all the quarantine. So every day is going to be a new day, but I think as a CEO or as a leader, your entire team feels your sentiments. There might be some down days, but I think it is very important that we continue to be vulnerable, we continue to be transparent, but we need to go and have the courage and be decisive in what we need to go and do.
Totally agree. I recently actually had a podcast with a gentleman. He's called the Fear Guru. He has a book out. It's called Fear is Fuel. And as you can imagine what the whole nuances of that is, it's really saying, you know, if you have fear, there's a way it can drive you. He used to have a fear of flying, which is a funny story for you there, Karen. And now he flies stunt planes. So he's gone complete opposite, and he overcame cancer. He's a cancer survivor for 15 years. So I'm talking about, you know, dealing with fear on the highest level and turning it around. So interesting one. Anyone should check it out if you want to learn a bit about it. Let me grab a couple more questions here. Here it says, it's evident that the pandemic will potentially could happen again in the future, and therefore future lockdowns could come back, whether it's the current virus or future viruses. Are you already thinking about it now? How would you deal with it, or are you just still in the current moment? How much are you planning ahead if this continues in whatever fashion? Karen.
I think the reason why we have started pivoting and, you know, to Jason's point about diversification is that we know that the virus is here to stay in mutational forms, or, you know, once a vaccine is out, this may be just like another normal flu. But the impact on travel is not going to be just the next few months. It might be more longer lasting. Sure. Hence, as we continue to go and stimulate travel, we also need to go and start pivoting to basically non-travel, daily, frequency driving businesses. That's why one thing that I keep telling my team is that from travel to local, for us to be able to go and sustain a business, for people to come back to our site, we can't just go and anchor on one vertical anymore. We need to go and start exploring like daily lifestyle. We need to go and start exploring online e-commerce, last mile fulfillment. So it's basically a barbell strategy that we need to go and take. And yeah, some of them will actually take time to go and grow out, but the time is now for us to go and take action.
Hamish, I mean, again, your business is also was impacted, but it's slowly, of course, as you're saying, is coming back to normal. Do you believe that if, as I said, the virus comes back in whatever form or shape it maybe is, that you're now better prepared and therefore the impact will be, you can, you know, soften the blow, or it's just going to have another round and it's going to come back and up and down again?
I think we'll see an up and down, but we're much better prepared than we were, say, at the beginning of this year. And what we plan to do is continue to evolve the business towards more of an online transactional experience that a car buyer can essentially buy a car from home eventually. that car can then be delivered, maybe delivered contactlessly to their driveway. And that is going to be sort of a great experience for both car manufacturers as well as car dealers to tap into should something like this return. Or even if it doesn't, this could be the new preference of people of how they want to shop for a car. I think the other side for us, we've focused a lot on building great content to engage with people outside of their car buying experience, so during their ownership phase. And we're going to be building that out as part of our business moving forward as well. A pandemic and a second wave, if businesses are shut down, then we'll certainly be impacted. But I think the steps we're taking now will certainly reduce the drop in business activity that we saw in March and April in some of our key markets.
Great. So we got about 10 minutes to go here. So I slowly want to wrap it up. I know the hour flew by here. Let's get into this sort of your own personal learnings from the last, let's say, 4 months, whether it's personal or business related. Please share, what is it really your biggest takeaway, and how what do you think how it's going to impact you, the business, into the future? Jason, start with you.
Yeah, let me just share something with Hamish you may find funny, Hamish. So very early on in the pandemic, my driver decided to leave Jakarta and go back to Bandung. So for the last 14 weeks, I've been driving my Velfire around Jakarta. I can't tell you how many people look inside the car and go, what is the bule doing driving the car?
Well, who's the guy in the back that he's driving?
It's been really interesting driving around Jakarta, and I've really enjoyed it, actually. But I think the biggest thing for me is taking things for granted. I think whether it's a loved one that you see every day, whether it's the revenue from your business, whether it's the office you go to, your favorite coffee shop, I think it's been a stark reminder to us all not to take life for granted and to live in the moment, live in the present, and enjoy it and relish it, the challenges. And I think, one of the things I've learned, I've tried to learn more about different religions and different followings since I've moved to Asia. And one of the real things I really enjoy in Buddhism is this fact that everything will pass. I'm not Buddhist. It's something I've read. Everything will pass. The good and the bad will pass. In your good moment, this time will pass. But if I take nothing else away from it, I want to take away that I was taking too much for granted. And when you take things for granted, your humility is somewhat diluted. And that's my biggest thing. And I don't want to sound deep because I'm not that kind of guy. I'm pretty lighthearted and I enjoy that. The things I've invested in my own personal life is I've bought a Marzocco coffee machine so I can have good coffee every day. I have a good store of gin because I like a gin and tonic on a weekend. So, I enjoy life, but I think we took it for granted, and hell, we've been taught a lesson, right?
For sure. Hamish, what's your last thought here?
Yeah, that's a really nice sentiment that Jason kind of takes there. I think for sure we've been taking stock of actually what is important, and certainly in the personal life, how you're spending your time, whether that's staying healthy or staying connected with your family. I think I've spoken to my family more in the last 4 months than in the last few years of being overseas. So it's definitely staying connected with your family and friends. As you had to make business decisions through this, I think that very quickly when you were tossing up what should we do with the business and how should we look after the health of our employees, we're very quick to see it's an easy decision that you need to prioritize the people around you, whether they're your family or your employees as well. So a big focus on trying to be a bit more outward looking towards the people around you who are in your life that you're trying to make a difference for, all the way down to your customers and what are the changing needs that they have during this period. And I think that's been a real forced perspective on our business that we're going to try and maintain moving forward, having much more outward focus and a focus on our customers and their changing needs and what do we need to do to adapt to serve them better.
Karen, I have a tough one for you, which just came in here, but I think it's a very important question. Has any one of you already had to face laying people off because of COVID, and how did you manage the situation? How do you deal with it?
Thanks for leaving all the tough ones to me, Marcus. Obviously, we are in the aviation industry, and it is not just about AirAsia, but across the whole aviation industry, cost containment and headcount rationalization is something that we do not take lightly. And I think the difference between an organization that will survive this and an organization that won't is really the culture. And I think that's what, as a CEO, as a leader, this is basically the legacy that we leave behind. I can tell you a real story. Obviously, cancellation and refunds have, we still haven't seen the end of it yet, but we were just basically hit with the volume that we have never seen before. And we need to go and get volunteers to go and help the customer servicing team. We were able to go and get over 1,000 in about 3 weeks. And actually a lot of them have been staff that have been asked to let go. They come back and volunteer to go and help out the airline. And I think that is really, really touching because, these are all staff that has also contributed a lot. And even though they are no longer part of the organization, they still carry their brand proudly with them. So I think that is a story that, hopefully when we can go and paint the sky red again with our planes, we can also go and take them back. But yeah, headcount rationalization is real. I think for the first month, literally maybe 6 to 8 hours of my days is basically talking to people that we have to go and let go. And it's not easy. One thing that we do very well as an organization, because Tony is such a visionary, is to go and repurpose staff. Those grounded crew who may not be able to fly, now we are repurposing them to be drivers for our last mile delivery. We are now able to go and do 24-hour delivery for Klang Valley and KL because we actually go and have drivers available. So those are things that we are actually looking at and keeping the team tight. But that's from my side of the story.
Yeah, no, that's and that's why I picked on you, because everyone I'm sure read about what you guys had to do, and I think Jason mentioned you were hiring people, so you probably didn't have necessarily that to face. Hamish, how was it on your side? Did you guys have to let people go or just reorganize things a bit?
Yeah, unfortunately, we in the end had to scale down our headcount and let some great team members go as well. So we tried to put that off for as long as possible. So in the beginning of Q2, we asked all of our employees to accept a pay reduction. So at the lowest levels, we didn't reduce people's pay, and then they sort of scaled up to both the board and myself having a 40% pay cut for the whole of Q2. Unfortunately, we got towards the end of the quarter and realized we had to take the next step, which was the next part of our contingency plan of reducing our staff. So we had to say goodbye to 52 people, which very difficult, and we're in the process of how we set the business up to still be able to run successfully in Q3. And those are the difficult decisions that have to be made, and trying to take into account all of your best data around where is the business going to go, where do we need to allocate cost towards in order to grow the business and ensure its survival. And it's a very long conversations with the board around which of these different strategies we have to have at these different points in time, and particularly where people were concerned, really going through every other scenario first before we made the decision that we had to make some great team members redundant. So it's always one very challenging thing, these people and they have families, and it's a tough thing to have to do, but overall still need to make those difficult decisions to ensure the business continuity and that can come out of a challenge like COVID has delivered to us in the second quarter.
Hey, Marcus,
can you wrap it up with us here? Because I think you were hiring folks, but did you have to do some of that as well? You had to let some folks go?
I really need to correct this. I don't want you to feel that we've got through this without scars. It's been a bloody tough time as a CEO and as everybody. And we actually went into a hiring freeze in the second half of 2019. We felt the organization was growing too rapidly and there wasn't enough controls on productivity. So we've only hired a few critical people in the last 12 months.
Okay.
So the organization is creaking. Now, we've been fortunate that we did that. In hindsight, we're very lucky. We've managed to maintain, myself and my leadership team has taken, similar to Hamish, we've taken financial measures. So we've taken pay cuts because it's the right thing for us to do ethically and morally. We don't have a bonus for the first half of the year. So we're not in a bonus period. We won't be paying bonuses. There won't be promotions. There's lots of things where we've just had to take, what I said to my team is very simply, there's two things we have to do. Number one, we have to stay relevant. What does the country and what does society need for us to be relevant during this period of COVID? And we reorganized ourselves around being relevant. And Pakar, our president director, and Pamirza, our president commissioner, have been critical to engaging different agencies to allow us to be relevant. And I'm very grateful. Secondarily, it was about everybody being productive. I can only protect your income if you help me by being productive. That was the deal. I think the problem is, if I look at the scale of Karen's organization, you take the aircraft out of the sky, you just can't make everybody productive. So my heart goes out to Karen and to Hamish. I've done this in the past in different periods of my career, and it's harrowing, right? It's saying goodbye to people is just awful. And I feel for you, and I know you've been through tough times because I know I have. So, but nobody has gone through this pandemic without skirmish, and I don't think it's over yet. There's more to come in terms of the way we deal with it. So I think as a CEO, I try and get 6 hours sleep a night. I try and wake up the next morning ready to face what I'm going to face, and I try and keep my organization as focused as possible. After that, sometimes you just got to step back from it and take a fresh look. And my closing comment to people is, just like when you were in a non-pandemic environment, you need to step away, take a day off, read a book, go for a walk, switch off the phone, refresh your leadership energy, because it will be depleted. I know I'm tired at the moment. I know I need a couple of days off. I've not taken any time off. My advice would be, be fit for purpose, look after yourself.
Yeah, great. I think some very nice closing words here. And we are right sharp at 4, just slightly after. So I think this was good fun. I hope everyone who we had on here as our listeners enjoyed it. It definitely was about how now CEO. I think we got some very nice insights, both from the personal level as well as what our panelists here are all doing on their day-to-day business. So, and it's very different. It's tough for everyone, I think, even though anyone who's, maybe see some positive out of this. So I wish you guys best of luck for the next few months here, and hope we'll all be back on planes and buying cars and, of course, using all those services there.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys. Yeah,
Thank you.